Salvador Flores served as a volunteer in the Texan Army in 1835 to 1836. He was instrumental in organizing and commanding Texian volunteers in support of the Texas Revolution. He participated in many battles and would rise through the ranks to reach captain status during the fight for Texas independence from Mexico. Salvador continued to provide protection for the ranchers and settlers of Texas throughout the Republic years. Early life. He was the son of José Flores de Abrego and Maria Rodriguez. They were a prominent family of Texas, rich in the ranching history of Texas. Four José Flores de Abrego's sons, Captain Salvador Flores, Captain Manuel N. Flores, Lieutenant Nepomuceno Flores, and Private José Maria Flores participated in the Texas Revolution, serving at Texas and San Jacinto. Salvador was also a brother-in-law to Col. Juan Nepomuceno Seguin. Texas Revolution. Fighting begins in Gonzales, Texas. The first skirmish establishing the Texas Revolution began in early October 1835, at the Battle of Gonzales. The Texians would be challenged by the Mexican Army when they tried to retake possession of an artillery piece at Gonzales, Texas. It was a small cannon formerly given them by Mexico, which had been used for security against the native Indians. Texians considered this action as an infringement of the right to bear arms and were determined to keep it. On October 2, they would show that determination. During this time, a meeting would be held at Salvador Flores Ranch that would organize a volunteer force of Texas ranchers that would favor the impending revolution. Soldiers continued gathering, immigrants, colonists, native Texans. The Texian Army would become a mixture of all peoples, interested in freedom from the oppressive policies of Mexican President Antonio López de Santa Anna. The fight spreads to Goliad, Texas. After the victory at Gonzales, the Texan forces gained confidence. Trying to sustain the momentum, Commander Austin deemed it necessary to take possession of Presidio La Bafia and Texas. The Texian troops marched towards Goliad to reinforce Major Collinsworth at the Battle of Goliad, but were overtaken by an express from Austin, asking them to join the attack on Texas. On October 23, 1835, Stephen F. Austin granted a captain's commission to Juan Seguin, authorizing him to form a company, which would be supplied with guns and ammunition by the provisional government. Austin's aide, William T. Austin, asserted that these Mexicans, being well acquainted with the country, were of important service as express riders, guides to foraging parties, and AMP-C. Several days later, Salvador Flores and Manuel Leal joined the effort with 41 Tejano volunteers from ranches southwest of San Antonio. Flores became the first lieutenant of the Central Texas Volunteers and Placido first LT of the Southern Volunteers, while Seguin would be immediately tasked with the burden of supplying the Texian troops with food and provisions. Salvador was left to reconnoiter the missions at San Antonio and handle the militia. Several more parties of locals eventually joined in, with isolated enlistments occurring every day. Focus on San Antonio, Texas. At Mission San Jose, they accompanied James Bowie with the orders to approach the city by following the river's path into town. Four groups, led by Valentine Bennett, Andrew Briscoe, Robert M. Coleman, and Michael Goheen, and the Scouts, were also sent to explore the other missions. While investigating, they were discovered by Mexican guards and gunfire was exchanged before joining with Bowie. His recruits joined with Bowie in the Battle of Concepcion on October 28, 1835. The Texans won again and gained confidence and some new ground. After the fight and learning of the plan to siege Texas, he would recruit more men from the ranches on the San Antonio River. Drifting into the volunteer ranks would be 14 soldados from the fort, is now disillusioned with the Centralists. On November 10, the Tejanos had teamed up with Deaf Smith and Travis to capture a herd of over 300 horses. On November 14, Austin instructed Flores to burn off the whole country from the other side of the Nueces to the Medina on the roads from Laredo and the Rio Grande. This would make it more difficult for the Mexican army to graze the livestock. Flores was also to explore the Rio Grande area and report on any movement of Mexican troops towards Texas. During December 5 to 10, 1835, the Texians would attempt to take Texas. Now heavily involved in house-to-house fighting, Salvador participated as second lieutenant in the siege and capture of Texas. The company of Seguin now amounted to over 160. He would advance with troops to capture the Alamo at the Siege of Beira and see to the removal of Mexican forces of General Cos from Texas. After the surrender of Cos, his company was sent out to protect the families of the lower ranches against the devastation made by the retiring Mexican troops and from the reprisal of hostile Indians. The people of Texas would now control Texas and the Alamo Fort. Colonel James C. Neal receives orders on December 21 to command at Texas. Colonel James Bowie moves into the Alamo under Neal on January 19, bringing 30 men. On behalf of Henry Smith and General Sam Houston, he assesses the military situation at Texas. On January 22, verbal intelligence was directed at Col. Neal, from the Tejano courier through the Jose Antonio Navarro family. Jose Casiano brings news that Gen. Santa Anna had arrived at Saltillo on January 27 with approximately 3,000 troops and Sesma at Rio Grande City with 1,600 more. Neal passes this information to Houston, now in Goliad. Bowie, after learning that Santa Anna was advancing towards Beira, wrote several letters to the provisional government asking for supplies and assistance to defend the Alamo. An election for delegates to attend the convention of 1836 is held at the Alamo on February 1. Captain Flores, as well as other names, are recorded and preserved on the voting tally list. Neal and Bowie now agree that defending the Alamo is key to achieving Texas independence. On February 3, Colonel Travis arrives in Texas with 25 men. Colonel Neal, forced to leave on urgent family matters, makes a quick muster roll of his men at the Alamo. Colonel Neal would pass command of the Alamo to William Barrett Travis on February 12. Former Congressman David Crockett of Tennessee boosted the ranks on February 8 with 16 additional men. On February 10, a party was given to honor the arrival of David Crockett, with Neal leaving early on February 11. He was not present. Blas Maria Herrera, a courier from Placido Benavides, was searching for Juan Seguin at the party and could not locate him. Possessing a letter dated February 6, it was then given to Antonio Menchaca. Handwritten in Spanish, it announced soldados at Presidio Rio Grande, ready to march on Texas. Travis, now forewarned, remarked that it would take about 13 days for the Mexican army to arrive, and still was not immediately concerned with the information received, and the party continued into the night. Bowie and Travis's agree to share command on the 14th. On Feb. 16, Ambrosio Rodriguez was warned by his wife's cousin from Laredo, and another warning came again on February 18. Travis was still skeptical. On the 20th, Blas Maria Herrera from Seguin's own company reported that Santa Anna had crossed into Texas. Travis held a council that night at 9 p.m. The story was told and the same verdict was reached: it couldn't be true. Local families began packing possessions, with intent to leave Texas. About a dozen of Seguin's men were so convinced that they requested to leave, in order to remove the families from Santa Anna's path. Santa Anna's forces would enter Texas on February 23, surprising the Texian forces and initiating a siege of the Alamo. The Texians and Tejanos would immediately gather in the Alamo for safety and defense, with some bringing the families into the compound. The battle lasted for 13 days, with the final battle lasting 90 minutes and terminating in violent hand-to-hand combat. All Texian forces effectively lost. Several Tejanos remaining in the Alamo perished. San Antonians Juan Abumio, José Gregorio Esparza, Antonio Fuentes, Toribio Lozoya, André Nava, Juan A. Badillo, Damacio Jimenez and José María Guerrero. Antonio Cruz Rocha and Alexandro de la Garza left as couriers before the fall. Juan Seguin stated that with him 15 men also entered to defend the Alamo. Lindley believes that the Flores brothers were defending the Alamo during the siege. After serving at the Battle of Texas, Salvador was one of the few 100 or so that remained at the Alamo with Neil. His brother Manuel and other Tejanos entered on February 23. Neil's roster places Captain Flores in the Alamo as an artillery officer. Captain Flores also appears on Colonel Neil's voting tally as well. Somehow, they seem to have exited soon after Seguin's departure, thus putting them on the Alamo survivor list. In 1907, Enrique Esparza claimed that Santa Anna called an armistice and he remembers some Flores leaving then. They took this opportunity to gather Alamo reinforcements, bringing along a couple more of the Flores brothers, and secure their families. They then rendezvoused with Seguin, now in Gonzales. The company headed for the Alamo. The Tejano defenders were joined by up to 14 more men from Gonzales. They proceeded toward the Alamo. They waited on the Cibolo Creek to team up with Fanon. The Alamo fell before they could reach it. Regrouping in Gonzales and on to San Jacinto, Texas. The news of the fall of Texas and Battle of the Alamo was overwhelming for the Texans. A frantic flee eastward began immediately after receiving the fateful news at Gonzales in March 1836. The Tejano volunteers now being reassembled at Gonzales would ride with Captain Flores. Salvador Flores had accepted Sam Houston's orders during this runaway scrape. As troops would march away from Gonzales, Salvador Flores along with a group of volunteers formed the rear guard that protected the fleeing families and proceeded westward to secure the lower ranches of San Antonio. The forces then split. Salvador maintained this position, offering protection from Mexican and Indian attack, while his relatives Captain Manuel Flores, Lieutenant Nepomuceno Flores, left with Seguin to regroup a company of men that followed Houston toward East Texas and on to San Jacinto. Texas Republic 1836–1842. In late 1836, Salvador Flores was captain of Company C, which served the citizens of Texas, much like a ranging company. Later in 1839, Flores would serve the Republic of Texas as First LT in Col. Juan Seguin's company, Salvador Flores would protect the colonists as a participant in the Henry Khan's campaign against the hostile Comanche Indians. As a member of the Khan's company, he would team up with Matthew Caldwell's Rangers in the pursuit of Vicente Cordova. Again, he would be involved in 1842 in organizing San Antonio citizens concerned with the imminent reinvasion by Mexico. Assigned as captain by Mayor John William Smith, he would command 100 local Texianos against the Mexican invaders led by General Adrian Wall. Later life and family. Flores married Concepcion Rojo on September 30, 1848 in San Antonio, and they had 2 children. Salvador Flores spent the remainder of his life in and around the now U.S. city of San Antonio, Texas. He died on January 17, 1855 in that city. Juan Seguin was appointed administrator of his holdings and became the guardian of his family. In 1858, he filed a probate for the Flores family. Legacy. His skills and tactics demonstrated on horseback would be those modeled by the Texas Rangers. In later years, the Flores descendants would be the ones to donate the land for the establishment of the city in Texas that bears the name, Floresville, Texas. A Texas state historical marker was placed at the Floresville courthouse during the 1986 Texas sesquicentennial. It now stands in honor to Salvador Flores and his family for the service to Texas. Texianos who served under Juan Seguin